Hello and welcome to the New Thought Men's Podcast, where we explore what it is to be a healthy spiritual man today. I'm Eamon. It's great to have you with us. Hello and welcome to the New Thought Men's Podcast. I am Eamon. Welcome. John Waterhouse is with us today. John, so great to see you. Welcome.
Thank you, Eamon. It's good to be with you.
Great to have you here. Let me just share a few words about you. So John Waterhouse, life's purpose is to reveal and release the power of divine presence within each person he meets. I know that for a fact because I've known you for a while and you do evoke that. So for nearly 30 years, John served as a founding co-minister with his wife, Reverend Dr. Barbara Waterhouse of the Center for Spiritual Living, Asheville, North Carolina. His commitment to leadership in our spiritual movement called John to serve as the dean of the Midwest campus of Holmes Institute. And so many other, there is a whole list of things that you have led here, John. So I'm just going to thank you for stepping in and being a part of this deeper expression of the science of mind and spirit philosophy and the New Thought philosophy. It's not an easy thing to say, yeah, I've been a spiritual leader for 30 years. Of a group of people. And so I think that's where I'd like to start the conversation today is just what are the different, let's start at the beginning. What are the different kinds of leadership? So, I mean, we've got business leadership. We've got someone who's working for more of a spiritual leadership. We've got someone who's leading their own life or someone who is leading or co-leading their family, leading a group of people. So many different scenarios. I think we're all called to be leaders in our own way. But why don't we start there? What do you think about? Share some of your wisdom on leadership in general.
What I want to start by saying is this is an interesting conversation, spiritual leadership, to have with you in particular, Eamon, because you are a spiritual leader, and you've demonstrated that again and again by the way you've touched so many lives, so many men through this work that you do, and what a difference that has made for so many. And that's your being a leader, and you do it well. And I'm just honored and blessed to have you in my life. So thank you for all of that.
Thank you, brother.
And to the matter of being a spiritual leader, I think that we can all see ourselves as spiritual leaders without question. Because somewhere in our lives, it's required that we touch hearts and lives, that we stand as a model. And I believe that being a model is exactly what we need to do. And every time we have that opportunity, we should step up and do it.
Yeah. I think that's service. I mean, it comes at we're here to be on this planet of service to others. And for me, I guess, and I'm guessing for you as well, that is, and for a lot of us maybe, that are leaders in this movement we desire to make the world a better place. And so we step up into these roles that, even for myself, I'm an introverted person. I would not have chosen if someone would have said, you're going to be a spiritual leader someday. I'm like, I'll take a pass on that one. Thank you.
Some of the best spiritual leaders I've ever known are introverts. And that's because you work it out inside before you bring it to the outside. I'm a severe extrovert, and sometimes I learn things about myself after I say them. So I think you're in a much better position to be a spiritual leader than I am. I mean, I've been prone to say things I shouldn't have said. where introverts tend not to do that. So don't see that as a downside. It just means that you have to be willing to stand up and say, how about this? How about we move in this direction? How about we consider this in our direction? Or as I listen to everyone, this is what I'm seeing happening. And when you do things like that, you're leading. You simply are. And as long as you keep it in a context of your spiritual principles, then you're a spiritual leader. It doesn't require that you be in a pulpit. It doesn't require that you be in an elected position. It only requires that you have something to say, and you say it in a way that people can hear you.
Yeah. Communication is a big part of leadership, for sure.
Absolutely, without question.
In just reflecting on my own life, I created 3 businesses from scratch and ran them for most of my adult life, and in my field of construction, and was grateful to make a good living doing that, and helping people transform their house. And but those forms of leadership were definitely different on a construction site, as you can imagine, than in a group of spiritually minded people. So it was more directive, task-oriented, completion kind of stuff. And it's so interesting because having done that for so many years, and certainly, experienced all aspects of leadership in that, of being successful at that, and also not being successful at that, and pissing people off, and learning from all those experiences, I think has really grown me a lot to then move into a place of being a minister and being a spiritual leader, because those are 2 very different animals. And don't get me wrong, there's always going to be tasks that have to be done, but I think there's a different inclusive experience or expression of being able to communicate, and the nuanced ways of communicating a job site, a construction job site, versus a spiritual community, for sure.
Well, and you can be a spiritual leader in either of those environments. Yeah. One thing you do is, though, especially when you have a small organization, is you recognize that some of what you do is leadership and some of what you do is management. They're not the same thing.
Yeah.
And when you're handling tasks, you're being a manager, or you're being a worker. And when you're supporting an outcome that includes other people, you're being a leader. Mm-hmm. So most of us switch back and forth, and it's a dance between being someone who is creating a vision, someone who is listening and learning from someone who is doing tactics to make something work out. Mm. Those are real different parts of who we need to be.
Yeah.
And the leadership comes from wisdom. It comes from our willingness to listen and to be present with other people and to create a vision for where we're going. Mm. And the part of you that created the vision of a business was being a leader. But the part of you of climbing up on a roof and making things happen with that is part of being a manager, or part of being a task-oriented member of a team. Yeah. So but it's a mix of things. You're doing all that almost at the same time.
Yeah, it is. And later in my life, I was able to bring more of the inclusive spiritual orientation for the most part, to my businesses.
Of course.
And it definitely shifted things too, which was great, which also got me into leadership, and encouraged me to do that just through my own life experience, because I am a visionary person. Like I definitely get a clear vision in my mind and in my heart, mm-hmm. and then just want to see that outcome, want to see that happen, whether it was for remodeling somebody's home or now, helping guys, renew their own lives and come to a new place. So let's switch gears a little bit here and maybe talk about some of the key practices for leadership of what are the things, and we do a lot of this in men's work, in counsel and everything. But what are some of the things that that guys can practice that'll support that leadership ability in coming out of them?
I think it starts with listening, because if you don't have a context for where people are, and if you're trying to get them motivated and create an outcome, and you really don't know your audience, you've heard the phrase "read the room." It's important for leaders to know who they're talking to and to understand what the challenges are for those individuals in their lives, so that you see how you apply the outcome that you're seeking. You listen and you learn from people. And if people are presenting things that are contrary to where you are, I think one mistake that many of us have made, and some of us still make, is to not be listening, but to be trying to frame a response before you really hear what they're saying.
Yeah.
And I've seen people do that. I've done it myself. It doesn't work well. You need to really earnestly, sincerely listen to what people are saying. Then they know you've listened. And then there's a possibility that they will follow you, that they will hear what you're saying. But if you can't do that, then you're just whistling in the wind, and you're not going to get the outcome you're looking for.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Being present, being in the now. We highly recommend that in general, but especially as a spiritual leader.
Absolutely.
I think especially listening skills, and communication skills in general, are so helpful if you're a leader. If you're a leader and you're not actively kind of practicing and pursuing wisdom around kind of listening, around communication, then that's something that will up-level your leadership almost immediately if you start to engage in some of those practices of how am I communicating to people? How do I improve those skills? And as I mentioned before, the perfect place is that we get to practice is a men's group or a women's group. We get to practice by listening. We get to sit in counsel, and we get to hear the stories. And especially for us, like you said, as spiritual leaders, we're holding that high vision. And so New Thought men's groups are all about that. It's not only active listening and sometimes reflective listening, but it's about seeing the truth of the person and knowing the truth of the person.
Absolutely.
And allowing that wisdom to shine forth.
That's the spiritual element of it all. That's the deepest spiritual element, because in a secular environment, you still have to listen. But from a spiritual perspective, you have to remember who you're working with, who these people are that you're leading. You have to not see them as less than. You must see them as those that are the presence of the divine, equal to you in every way. I think that one important part of spiritual leadership is to stay out of judgment, to not be finding fault in the people around you, to understand their positions. You don't have to agree with them, but you have to understand them so that you can speak to them intelligently about who they are and what they're attempting to accomplish. In fact, every time I've motivated people in that regard, I've done it with using their words and their ideas. Because they understand that and they resonate with that. And when you hand that back to them, you're actually creating the outcome that serves everybody. One of my spiritual teachers would say that I do two things. In one hand, I hold a light up so that we can see clearly. And in the other hand, I hold up a mirror so that you can see who you are. Now, to me, that's leadership, because it's not all about the leader. It's about the group. It's about the individuals in the group. And everyone focuses from that position. We can be in ministry, which is where I am. We can be excellent speakers. We can dazzle people with our spinning of words. But if we don't know who we are, if we don't know who we're speaking to, it can fall flat, or it cannot move beyond standing at the podium.
Yeah.
And when that happens, you're really not being an effective leader. You're simply teaching concepts or presenting concepts. And as Holmes said in the conclusion of the Science of Mind textbook, is that it's far easier to teach the truth than it is to practice it.
Yeah, it's in the practice, and really, I think for me, the modeling of it, like as best as I can, being the flawed human experience that I am and having, and to try and come from that divine spiritual experience and be that, but just knowing that, hey, I'm a neurodiverse person. I have my whole life, I've fallen flat on my face many, many times. I am not afraid of failure because of that. And so I'm grateful for that teaching. Like, I got a ton of F's in school. And what that taught me is just, okay, persistence, and that is not the judgment of me as a human being. That is simply how I performed there. And finding out then after the fact that I was neurodiverse and had challenges with dyslexia, to be able to look at that and reframe that in a different way. But I think to be able to lead by example, and even have and share those spiritual, those challenging fall in the face moments, because we all have them, can be beneficial, can be helpful as leaders, to say, hey, I'm struggling here, guys. Like, I've had to say that quite a few times during the summit. We've been creating, like, my strong suits are not do the copy, read the write stuff. I'm good at it in some respects, but when it comes to that very detailed task stuff, that's not my gift. And so I've slowed down the process at some points in creating the summit, and
and yet it doesn't stop you from achieving what you're here to do.
Yeah,
you accept that you may fall down, but you know how to get up.
Yeah,
and you move forward. And when you do that, it's going to work, and people will notice. And you speak very openly about your dyslexia, and yet you don't see how that impairs your ability to touch lives.
Yeah,
because you know what you're good at, you do that, and you support the people around you. I see that consistently with you. And those are signs of leadership. That's the way to model leadership. And I've said this before, but I want to say it again, is it's important not to be in judgment of the people around you.
Yeah.
To know that even when they make errors, or when they do something that seems inappropriate, that you don't find fault in them. You help understand, you seek to understand why they are the way they are, what they do, and you encourage them in ways to move forward.
Yeah. And even in ourselves,
when you create blocks, when you judge people, and we just don't want to do that. Our modeling is to keep it inclusive and to keep people close.
Yeah, including ourselves in that. Like,
absolutely, top of the list.
Kind to myself in this. Still working on that one. I'll let you know when I figure it out.
We're all working on it.
But it does bring up a great point that I'd love to share, in that, what we do here in the New Thought Men's community is we have group agreements, right? Mm-hmm. And the first one is safety. Creating safety and building trust. So without safety as a spiritual leader, another one, confidentiality, speaking clear communication, self-care, and then lastly, the greater knowing. So those are our core ones. And then there are a bunch of practices and skills, like you said, non-judgment, taking responsibility and ownership, being authentic, being honest, being respectful, compassionate. All of these things that we do to create the environment for everyone to be authentic in that circle, and to be able to be our authentic selves really speaks to the level of safety in the room and the safety in the circle. Because if it's not there, people won't open up. Guys won't open up. I've seen it before.
And you won't get the result that you seek.
Yeah. And so I think that's how do we set it up for success? How do we set our community up for success? Or how do we set the people that we're leading up for success? And I can see, in my youth, how I was not setting people up on the construction site for success. I just wanted accomplishment, get it done.
Yeah.
You know,
I agree. Well, how old were you when you started your first business?
that's a tricky question because I had a lawn mowing business at 14.
Well, you were doing that by yourself, though.
I was. My dad bought the lawnmower, and he's like, "Okay, it's your turn to mow the lawn." And I'm like, "Okay, I'm gonna make some money at this." Went around to the neighbors.
Now, I'm talking about when you actually had a crew, when you had people you were leading.
Yeah, I was 20 years old when I first started my business. So
you got way earlier than me. I think I was 28 when I incorporated my first business, and I didn't know anything about this stuff. Yeah. I knew how to sell. And I thought that would carry me through, but there's more to it than that. And it really took me finding the science of mind to really make things work in my life and to use the principles that we teach. And they all apply to being a spiritual leader. They all apply. And we are models for the people around us. So we have to give them the best of us. And when we fall short on that, it impacts them, it impacts us. Yeah. And if we're here to make the world a better place, then we have to be the best that we can be in doing that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So the first line of work is always on ourselves.
Yeah. Yeah. Also, I think you mentioned adaptability, and I think that's a powerful piece because we are change oriented, and maybe I'm going to make a sweeping comment here that may not be true for everyone, but I think men can tend to be more habitual or more patternistic oriented. Like we like safety. We like to know what's going to happen. A certain degree of that might be control or and
it's called certainty versus uncertainty.
Certainty versus uncertainty. Well, there you go.
Yeah. We and human beings in general want certainty, and that means we know how things are going to turn out, and that's not the way life works.
Yeah.
So we find ourselves falling short in that area, rather than being open to possibility and letting the thing unfold, being clear about where we want to go, what we want to accomplish, but not being stuck on each step and having it be just the way we want it, because that's not the way life works.
Right.
And so being a spiritual leader, you have to be resilient. You have to be able to accept things are not working the way you thought they would and adapt and change. And change doesn't come that easy to human beings. Even though we're part of a movement that says, change your thinking, change your life. None of us want change. We want it to be the way we expected it to be. So there's some work for all of us in that area.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. For sure. I think one of the other things, and I learned this at Mile High Church's men's group. So shout out to Mile High Church. That's my alma mater, as it were, my spiritual community that I have spent the last 30 years in. And I was a very active part of the men's group there. I've done a lot of men's groups outside of there as well, but it was super fun because all the men's group that I had done before was very much leader oriented. And the council that led the men's group there was, it wasn't consensus because there is a formality to that process, but it was kind of close, like what's needed here. And so we would have disagreements and fights and all kinds of stuff as to but in the end of the conversation, we were able to come back around to what are we serving? What's the greatest good that can happen here? And it was incredible because every single time the highest good really did get expressed and really got clarity and what is our forward movement, or what is the clarity that we needed to move forward, whether it was building the men's community there or building, creating a retreat or a workshop or something like that. And I think I have become a very big fan of the many voices theory, like that all voices are necessary, and to be able to ask everyone, okay, you've been pretty silent over there. What is yours? And, some are more, out there, I want all my ideas in there, and some are more shy and some take a little coaxing to come out. But it's amazing the wisdom the well-rounded wisdom that then shows up to be able to be of service and to be able to be of higher service.
Absolutely. You know, you and I have this both as part of our path, this working with men, which I did for many years. In fact, I started it before we started our center in Asheville. I had a men's group.
Yeah.
And there were 6 of us, and I put it together, and we were doing it. And I heard about a men's gathering over in the neighboring state in Tennessee. And so I registered and went over and experienced it. I came home and said to my circle, we have to do this. We have to create a men's gathering. And what I figured out down the road was that gathering wasn't well managed at all. But I learned from it, and I learned from everything that I did after the fact. But I worked with Robert Bly and Michael Mead, who were part of the Mythopoetic Men's Movement.
Yep.
I did gatherings with them and brought hundreds and hundreds of men from around the southeastern United States to Asheville to do that work.
Yeah.
And it was profound. It was brilliant work.
Yeah.
And
Yes.
you know, people like Bly and Mead aren't always the sweetest people, but that's part of their persona. So I had to learn how to do that, how to work with them. And it was fascinating work. And I grew so much from it, from being with all these people and learning how to make sure that every voice could be heard, as you talked about.
Yeah.
That's a key element of leadership, is to include everyone, to be inclusive. So I totally understand. And I have great respect for you, having been on that path myself.
Yeah, me too. I mean, the mythopoetic tradition is what I came up in, and a lot of you're right. Bly was an ornery old dude for sure. He was
like, mean to me a couple times.
He's just hilarious. But he was a no nonsense guy, and he's like, hey, I don't have the patience, I don't have the time, you know, like I'm here to speak the truth. And you know, to a certain extent, that is us. Like, to be maybe gentle about it, or sometimes not gentle about it. Some people need awakenings in different ways. And you know, I know for me, I need to hear it multiple times. Yeah. And oftentimes I need a slap in the head too from the universe. I try and get away from that these days, but sometimes it still shows up. And
well, my best way of working with people is to ask them questions.
Yeah.
And one of my big questions when somebody's in the middle of their story is, how's that working for you?
Yeah.
You know, just realize this isn't the way you need to be going to get where you want to get.
Right.
You know, reconsider that.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's talk about, you know, some of the challenges or things that might hold us back from leadership. I think there's a few things that I can relate to being new to being a spiritual leader. I just became a minister, you know, 3 years ago. So I'm still in the early phases.
You were a spiritual leader long before you got a ministerial license.
What's that?
I say you were a spiritual leader long before you ever got a ministerial license.
Oh, thanks, John. Yeah. I've definitely been involved in leadership with men for a long time, and I love it. And I've also seen some of my elders and some of my mentors really struggle in just having the pedestal effect. You know, like, I think there's a part of us, and this is Jungian psychology, there's a part of us that wants to project not only our negative, you know, traits on whatever politician there is of the day, or, you know, whoever it is that's in our, that isn't doing it right in our view, but also the golden side of us. So there's the shadow side, but there's also the golden side of us that we project as human beings onto other people. Oh, he is such a great leader. I could never do that. Or I could never be like, I could never talk in front of, I can never, you know, anytime. And so we tend to put those people up on the pedestal, which ultimately requires us to then knock them off the pedestal.
Exactly.
Well.
That's why I am never comfortable on a pedestal.
Yeah.
Never. Don't do that to me. One thing I did in Asheville all those years that I was there was, and I have 3 doctorates, but nobody there called me doctor. I didn't want them to. I asked them not to, because I wanted to be their equal. Yeah. I wanted them to be my equal. I didn't want hierarchy, because I think hierarchy is part of that thing.
Yeah.
I wanted them to love me the way I love them.
Yeah.
So don't play that game of somebody's better than somebody else, because that's a lie.
Yeah.
We're all on this path. We're all finding our way.
Yeah, absolutely. There's nobody that's 90% spiritual or somebody
No,
that's 110% spiritual. We're all 100% spiritual.
we are, and that is who we are.
Yeah.
And when we recognize that first in ourselves and then in everybody else, it does create an equal playing field.
Yeah. Yeah.
Where everyone can contribute. Everyone has something to bring to the table.
Yeah.
And it's a leader's job to see that and to bring it out.
I think there's other, and trying to work with myself on this of like being out there, being seen. I mentioned that I'm more of an introvert. So like there is this part of me that has sort of held back, and I'm slowly growing into, being more comfortable being out there and being that. But I think for each of us, there are those things that are like, I wouldn't want to be a leader because of this. And believe me, I had a long list before I went to ministerial school. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, okay, Spirit, you want me to do this? Help me find the way. And, there's such joy in it to be able to support and to be able to be a part of something that's so profound and so powerful. And for me, I feel is so needed right now. Mm-hmm. The men's movement, supporting men in these changing times, as well as women's circles and supporting women in these changing times. We all need that support of community. We all need that support of counsel. We all need that experience of being able to step in and lead a circle, right? Hey, let me practice today. I want to practice my leadership. Can I lead the group today? I'm going to do the opening prayer. I'm going to lead the council. I'll set up our discussion, and then I'll treat us out, and I loved it because in my own personal men's group that I was part of for 25 years, the Moonbellies, we had a saying: this is a leader-full group, not a leader-less group.
Very nice. I like that.
And that's the truth of it, is because we're all really practicing our leadership skills. We get a practice in our relationships. Sometimes that goes well. Other times it does not. We
call it a practice because we're all seeking to do it better.
Right. And those learning lessons that we get to have, and how do we make those easier on ourselves and especially on our community?
Indeed.
I think that's an exciting piece.
That's great.
The leadership path in New Thought. So we're talking specifically, and you talked really about being a spiritual leader, being a minister, and what that's like and the experiences. And just really appreciate you sharing your story in that. And it's so beautiful. And we all get to be leaders in some level if we want to in this movement. Volunteers, practitioners, coaches, ministers, be on a leadership council, be on a board. There are so many ways to give back to our spiritual community. And I know so many people that have done so much of that, myself included. I know you were a practitioner. I was a practitioner for 12 plus years before I became a minister. And it's all helps, I think, prepare us for that next step of leadership. And so just even practicing by volunteering for something, to lead something, lead a group, lead a men's group or whatever. But just some thoughts on maybe bringing forth this leadership and the service, stepping maybe into leadership a little bit more in our own lives. Share some of your thoughts on that.
I think the idea of spiritual leadership is a lot like purpose. It doesn't have an endpoint. It's a constant state of finding our way and learning and adapting and applying what we are learning. And I don't think that really we're ever complete with that until we say we are, until we take our last breath, perhaps. But as an ongoing thing, I don't think any leader should ever think they've got it all figured out. And Certainly that's the way it's been in my life, is that there are always new things to learn, new ways to apply. And to me, the bottom line is the lives that we touch and the way lives are changed because we've chosen this path.
Yeah.
And I see that in your life. I see that in my life. And I'm sure that many of the people that have shared as you've put this program together, it's true in their lives too, because they wouldn't be in this program if they were not spiritual leaders. They are. Yeah. And they model for all of us how to be and how to learn, how to grow, how to self-correct, how not to be self-critical, to forgive ourselves when things don't go the way we imagine, and to love ourselves no matter what. And then to put that to everyone else in our lives, to love everyone else regardless of what they do, even when it looks like they screwed up. You still love them. You don't make them wrong. You don't make them bad. Yeah. They're the presence of the divine every bit as we are.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. Oh. Okay. Final question.
Yes.
And I've been asking this of all the guys who've been on is what does healthy masculinity look like in the 21st century? And I might even add a caveat to yours is what does healthy masculine leadership look like in the 21st century?
It's an interesting time for many of us. Just with all the changes in how our culture is perceiving masculinity right now, I think that white males in particular have dropped a few rungs in the order of things. That's not the preferred state of being, and that there's a part of me that wants to say that's not fair. But the truth is that when we're in transition, when we're finding our way, things look different. And what I say to all of that is, don't let that stop you from being who you can be in the world. Just because there are some that think that there's something wrong with being especially white male in the world right now, that doesn't make it so. And that we can be someone who has a place in all of it, regardless of that. And we'll find our way. We'll do this. I believe that one of the most important elements of masculinity right now is being compassionate and to be available for other people, and to not be in a it's all about me type of mind frame, but to realize that we coexist in this state with other men, with women, with people who have different ways of being in the world. That's relatively new in how we perceive our fellow human beings, with transgenderism and the many other ways that people are experiencing and expressing their lives.
Yeah.
We need to be open to it. We need to realize that not everyone is going to do it the way we would do it. And that makes it all the better for everybody. So it may be a little harder to be a white guy right now in our culture, but that's still okay. We can do that. God knows we've asked people of other racial backgrounds to hold that rung for a long time. It's okay that we do it for a while, and we'll still find our way. And it really takes nothing away from who we are, because we are all spiritual beings finding our way here on planet Earth, seeking to do the best we can with our lives, and to try to get away from all the judgment and separation that is so easy to create in our culture.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. So much wisdom in all of that.
Thank you.
I love, we have to make room. We have to express that equality in a new way. Now that I think a lot of eyes were open during the pandemic, as far as inequality of so many different kinds and in so many different ways. And so, for me, it was very humbling and definitely made me more aware, and still continues to make me more aware of being more inclusive and listening more and honoring more of the many voices.
We have one real advantage being in the science of mind. When we hear about how some people are discriminated against, some people are looked down at, We don't have the luxury of doing that because we teach that the presence of the divine is wholly present within every human being. Yeah. So we don't have the opportunity, if you would call it that, to see someone as less than and to be in principle at the same time. It's impossible.
Yeah.
And when people have come to me and said, so what are you doing to support the racial divide in our country? And my answer is to be in principle, because that's not acceptable. Yeah. That's not the way we do this. And it's not that always it's the other person that suffers from that. We suffer from that if we play that game.
Yeah.
We fall short. We don't get to see the elegance that exists in so many people around us. But if we'll see them as our equal, if we'll see them as spiritual beings on the path with us and we with them, then we're open to see the brilliance, the massive gifts, and all of the possibilities that comes with that. And when we do that, we're creating a better world. And frankly, even though people are saying that our culture is diminished somehow, I don't believe that. I believe that what we're creating is something that will model in the rest of the world.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. Because when we can't, because of principle, because we recognize your spirit, like that's just the diversity of spirit. We're still 99.999% the same. We have blood and we have brains and thoughts, and our genetics are very, like it's not all that varied. And so the uniqueness actually gets to be appreciated, because like we're 99% the same. Oh, my view is, what's the 1% you're different from me? Oh, that's interesting. You're doing it that way. Or you were born this way, or, whatever those uniquenesses are about us become then the positive. It's like my dyslexia, where it becomes this expression of, I am just more of a creative person. These are my gifts and talents. I'm more of in my vision. I'm more of a dreamer. I need some help getting the day-to-day, tasks done, the organizational parts of it. But I love the things that I have to bring. And those are the things that I have to, and the organizational parts and the methodicalness of making sure everything happens in order. That's someone else's gift to bring. And unfortunately, I have many people around me who have those gifts.
That's great.
But yeah, to recognize that we all are that unique gift. We all have that uniqueness. And if part of it is the color of our skin or our gender or gender preference, or, just the many the varied ways in which we get to be our unique selves in the world, then I think that's the divine. That's the divine creativity acting through us to be these unique individuals that we are. And what a boring world. Yeah, what a boring world without it,
Agreed. My very words last Sunday when I was talking about the celebrating our differences was my talk title. Nice. That's the best of us, is that we are different. Thank God we're different. Yeah. And the ways that we're different, we don't have to agree with every idea we hear. That's fine. That doesn't make anybody wrong. We're allowed to have different ideas on how the world works. Yeah. That's the beauty of it.
That's the beauty of it.
Our center right now in Fort Lauderdale is renting to a Seventh-day Adventist group, a Haitian community. They use our sanctuary on Saturday, and they are lovely, generous people. And I feel so honored that they're using our facility. Now, they don't teach the presence of spirit the same way we do. So what? Well, what does that mean? Is that a problem? No, it doesn't need to be a problem at all. We just continue on exploring life where we are and finding our way. And in the midst of that, we create community, we create connection, and we support one another, which is the bottom line. Yeah. And whatever happens after we leave this plane of existence, what we believed about our spiritual path before that won't make a bit of difference.
Yeah. John, thank you so much. Thank you for coming to one of our first retreats many, many years ago, men's gathering, and you spoke, and guys still talk about what you did there. It was so beautiful. And thank you for being the spiritual leader that you are, and the years of wisdom and support to your communities, and the years of wisdom and support in men's work too, because we need that right now more than ever. We need experienced men's work guys to be a part of this movement, to help train, to help support. I mean, I would say if there was one thing that we're really interested in doing in the New Thought men's community, and that's developing leadership skills in men, whether it's to lead their own lives, to lead our own lives, to lead our families or kids, to lead our communities and business, or in many different ways spiritually, to lead our nations as politicians, and hopefully hold that bar higher than what we've seen maybe somewhat lately. And in the world, we're going to need this high vision of men and women stepping in to solve these incredibly big problems of the environment and ecosystem and climate change and societal change, and all of these things to come together in this oneness, in this how do we solve this? How do we help not only humanity survive, but how do we help solve it in a way that we actually get to thrive in the end? So,
well, it sounds like your work is moving in the right direction because you're addressing all those things. So thank you.
Thank you, John. So grateful for you being here today. Love having you. We'll have you back. We'll have some more conversations.
Wonderful. I'm looking forward to it every time we get to do this.
Awesome.
And I want you to know, Eamon, that I love you, brother.
I love you too. Thanks, John.
Okay.
So that wraps us up for today. Thanks for joining us. There's more to come. Stay tuned in. I hope you enjoyed this interview from the New Thought Men's podcast. For instant access to all podcast interviews, talks from our summit, men's groups, and so much more, join us at newthoughtmens.community. Thanks so much for being with us today. There's more to come, so stay tuned in.